Meeting to order. Today is July 18th, 2022. First order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Dr. Sullivan.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. I'd like to invite everybody to join me in a moment of silence, please. Thank you. This evening, we have invited both charter school applicants to address the board for 3 minutes each. We have unfortunately been notified that only one charter school is here to speak to us this evening. So if somebody from Springs would please come to the podium and speak to the board.
Thank you so much for having us here tonight. My name is Jared McLeod, and I'll be the Executive Director of Springs Public Schools Empower Academy. I just want to start off by thanking the board. This process, Dr. Hermsmeyer has been through many times over our 20-plus year history, and by far, this relationship with your staff and yourselves has been the most collaborative we've ever seen. So I just want to say thank you to Dr. Chastain, her team, and to all of you. So thank you very much. Throughout our time here in the community, we've heard nothing but fantastic things about your schools. You know, I've sat here through many board meetings over the last couple months and seen presentations from the school nurses, the speech pathologists, STEM schools, and now your TCAP score is going up and growing even in the midst of a pandemic. We've never once said we're coming here for higher test scores or to improve anything, just to be another choice for the families here in Rutherford County. You know, a core belief that we believe here at Springs is that all children are different, and just providing our families here in Rutherford County another option for their children to explore their own strengths and gifts as a Montessori, hands-on, personalized learning environment. It's different, and it's not going to fit all students, and many students are going to stay with the schools they're already thriving at. But just as a parent, to have a choice for their children is all that we ask for on behalf of the parents here in Rutherford County. And we understand this process. You know, we can appeal to the state commission, but it's always been our intention here in Rutherford County to want to partner with you. It's always to be here working with your staff. It's a 10-year charter term, and we want to have that relationship with the students that we all share. And I just thank you so much for this collaborative process. We thank you very, very much for having us here tonight. And the staff recommendation was excellent and very accurate to the collaboration that we've had over this last couple months. So I thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And before we move on, just want to make sure that there's nobody here from American Classical Academy that is to present to the board. Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to give board members and Dr. Sullivan an opportunity to share their thoughts.
Yeah, I just wanted to start, right or wrong, charter schools get a lot of attention, and so I wanted to make sure that we all, regardless of what our opinions, our thoughts, our decisions happen to be tonight, I'm sure we'll have differing opinions. I just want to always roll back to we each have our own individual decisions and opinions, and we need to respect those as individuals. And we also have to remember that we are collectively representing our district as an entity in supporting our students. So even if we have differing opinions, that doesn't mean we aren't on the same team in viewing of what we individually think are best for our students. And so please keep that in mind, even if we have differing opinions, that we're all here promoting what's best for our students and our own opinions. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Any members of the board?
I just want to say that I'm not anti-charter schools, and I believe in school choice. I also know we're way behind in building schools, and charter schools are one way that we can get our county and school system with classroom spaces due to severe overcrowding. And everyone knows I hate portables, and the sooner we can get the added space through additions, the sooner they will be gone. And Springs Charter, by focusing on a unique and special individualized approach to each child's learning style, seems to be a good fit. Therefore, I'm prepared to vote yes, and I can see a real benefit to our students with special learning disabilities.
Thank you, Ms. Maxwell. Any other member of the board? Mr. Young?
Charter schools have been a very controversial issue in our state, and I think the reason being is the way that this has all came about. I think our governor and our leadership in the state has done a terrible job in how they rolled this process out. And it's not that I'm against charter schools, but the way charter schools are currently structured in the state, I don't agree with. This needs to be a marriage between what the charter schools want to propose and what the local school boards see the need or what the need is. And I don't think we're on the same page when it comes to that. Another issue I have is we did a survey a while back, and we're here to represent the people of Rutherford County. This survey result come back with 179 responses. 48 supported the charter school, 131 did not. I have to take that as a pretty good representation of our population, and I will be voting no for charter schools.
Thank you. Any other member like to make comments? Mr. Estes?
This board, I've been on 8 years, and for the last 8 years, we've fought charter schools, vouchers, and other things. We didn't get any support from the legislator, and we definitely hadn't got any support from our governor. And I feel like that we've had charter schools and vouchers pushed down our throat without any say-so. So I'll have to be voting no.
Thank you.
As the board member that was immersed in both of these charter school applications, and they're setting up here in front of me, I entered this, and I was also on the other charter school application process. I'm going to have to say, as a 45-year public school teacher, I've never been in favor of charter schools. I am going to say, following the process and looking at the template and looking at the whole entire process of how this was done, I am not in favor of one of these charter schools, and I am in favor of another one. So you can change your mind on this. I feel like if there is something that can be offered to our children that cannot be offered in a public school, and I think one of these schools does offer something different, then we need to try to look into it. Therefore, I will be voting for one of these schools, and I will be voting against another one.
Thank you, Ms. Bratton. Any other member of the board like to address? Mr. Holden?
I'd like to say, of course, I've not been on the board very long, but I have been on the board during this charter school debate and issues. Been a parent in this county for many years, grandparent now in this county, got children in the school system. I am not sure that I see anybody of very much support from the community for these charter schools. As I said, we have results in this survey that doesn't show that. However, I sort of agree with Ms. Bratton. I think we need to look at it. I don't think it's a cure for our overcrowding. I don't think they can react any quicker than we can, really. But it's not that issue. But the governor, I think, has really done not a good job. The TISA funding to me was nothing more than an opportunity for charter schools and vouchers to come here. It started with an end result in the beginning. I don't think he's concerned with public schools. I don't think he's an advocate for us and these teachers. I think our teachers do a wonderful job. I cannot say anything bad about Rutherford County school systems. However, when you start with an end game of saying we want 150 charter schools this year, somebody's put a lot of thought and work into coming up with that magic number. And I feel like it was done. I don't think he was concerned with our public schools. I think he was concerned with getting his program developed. But I will say this, I was impressed with one of the schools. I was not impressed with the other school. I appreciate our committee doing their job. They did a very good job. They communicated very well with us. So again, I just think that the governor is part of the problem and not the solution.
Thank you, Mr. Holden.
Oh, I'm the last one. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I will be supporting both charter schools tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. This evening, I do appreciate all the work that the committee has done. It's a lot of work, a lot of hours that went into it. I've never been an advocate for charter schools, but I'm an advocate for our students. And I want to make sure that we make the right decision for our community and our students. And so this evening, the decision isn't easy, but I do appreciate the work of the committee, and I appreciate the recommendation. So at this point, do we want to have Dr. Chastain?
Yeah. Do you want to do your presentation?
So the way we've got it split up, we've got similar to what we did with the initial application review. So it's kind of what concerns have been addressed and where we are in the committee. And then Springs came first, and then we'll stop and have a resolution. Mr. Reed will walk us through that process, and then we'll move on to American Classical if that's okay.
That's fine. We have it opposite on the agenda, but we'll start with B.
And can I also say that I want to thank the committee and Dr. Chastain. She really took over this leadership for me last year, trying to do both of them, and she has done a much better job than I ever envisioned to do. And so thank you for your professionalism, supporting all of it, and as well as our entire committee, because there are countless hours that go into this process.
Appreciate you both.
So again, as a reminder, these are our two applicants that have gone through both the initial and then the amended review or application process. Quick review of some terminology. We are seeking, or the option before us is to be an authorizer for one or both of these schools. So you would be the authorizing process, and then you would serve as the authorizer as Rutherford County. The sponsors are our two that have put forth the applications before us. Again, this is the purpose of charter schools as outlined in Tennessee Code Annotated. So the applicants are not responsible for meeting all 6 of these. They are responsible for meeting 3 of the 6. The committee found that in both cases, they met 3 of those 6 needs. Here we are on the timeline. So we've kind of progressed through. We're at the end. Today, depending on that resolution, it will either immediately go into signing a contract or an agreement, which the bulk of the agreement itself is the application. So those are aligned in that way for a reason. And then if there's a denial, then we'll go through a process similar to what we did last year, where there will be 10 days for the applicant to appeal to the Tennessee Charter Commission, and we will provide them all the reports that we've provided you, along with individual scoring documents, and then we'll go through that process with the commission. A little redundant there. Okay, so here we are in the evaluation process. That on the top is all the things that we did in the initial review. The bolded is what we have conducted since you had your vote on that initial application. We have been in communication with both applicants. We organized all the individual comments. We prioritized them. We sent the remarks as stated in the reviewer's comments. Those were sent to both applicants. We had varying levels of communication with the applicants after that point. I will say that with Springs, we had quite a bit of communication as they sought to address every single one of those concerns. We then received the amended applications. The individual committee members just went through the same process that we did for the initial application, and they reviewed those completely independently. We did not meet and discuss anything in addition. We just simply did the same process with additional materials. So they submitted those on June 30th. That date is important because I would like everybody to know that despite comments that have been made, our committee members stuck to the TDOE rubric and submitted those comments ahead of the comments that were made publicly by Hillsdale's president. So Springs, these were the members of the committee. Did not change from the initial application. The summary of their application is similar or the same as it was in the initial application. Proposed enrollment didn't change. They, in their original application, mentioned the northwest area of Rutherford County. Since that capacity interview that took place in March, April, we have had more conversations with them and have kind of centered in on that Laverne, Smyrna area. Following that discussion, as is in line with their application itself, they've now kind of centered on that area and held all their community meetings in that area as well. So as the executive director stated, they are focused on personalized learning, mastery learning, and student-driven process. The recommendation from our committee is to authorize Springs, that they did meet or exceed the standard in all of the three main categories. Really quickly, these were just weaknesses that were mentioned in the initial review, so I wanted to make sure to address that they have been addressed in the amended application. So they have, since that initial application, there's some confusion about where they might be located. If you remember, they have kind of centered in on Laverne and Smyrna, held their community meetings there, engaged the community, have provided countless letters from the community in that with those specific zip codes. So that showed in their amended application. They provided additional curricular samples, crosswalks, addressed staffing gaps and contingencies within the different sections. So all those were addressed in the amended application. The only remaining concerns that our committee noted, just something that we need to keep, that we will work with them on if authorized, are for science and social studies, the curriculum. Some committee members had some concerns about the thoroughness of those particular contents, but they, in response to that comment, they provided additional materials and comments so that we were able to kind of feel good about that moving forward. And the way that the schedule loops in their approach can be very taxing on teachers in terms of time, and so that was also noted just in terms of making sure that the teachers are supported. They also commented back on that concern as well, so we're in discussions on how to best serve those teachers. So the strengths, this hasn't changed, but it's very family-centered, student-centered. There is a lot of consistency in things that we are already using as diagnostics, which was appreciated so that we can have those conversations, and that there's been continuous alignment and engagement with all of us. As far as the operations plan, they've addressed these weaknesses that were noted in the initial application. So like I mentioned before, there was some gaps in special education staffing based on different enrollment needs and how that aligned with the budget. They've addressed those concerns. We're not expecting either applicant to have nailed down a facility at this point, since it's kind of a strange way that this process goes. So they don't have a specific location, but have several facility contingencies in terms of buildings and types of buildings, whether it be churches or whatever, in that year zero that they could operate from. And again, similar with our other applicant, the transportation plan is not required as part of the rubric, but they did include a discussion of a plan on when they would look to serve those students through transportation. So that was appreciated. These are the remaining concerns, and like I mentioned in the recommendation report, even though we have concerns about their leadership and staffing being kind of maybe a little thin through those different states and all the different schools. I will say that maybe that's not warranted since they've shown up to every meeting that we've had here in Murfreesboro. So that is a concern, but I feel strongly that they can address that. And then teacher recruitment and staffing is a concern for all of us, so I felt necessary that we also included it here. Strengths, again, partnership has been strong, and the teacher compensation structure is competitive, especially for those early teachers in years 1 and 2. Financial plan, this was the one that was probably the most concerning at the beginning, but it was because there were some things missing in that initial application that showed through in the capacity interview, and then that additional information was included in the amended application. So they adjusted the budget and the narrative to reflect the funding sources that we were looking for, that the rubric was looking for, included some alternate revenue sources in that charter school funding from the federal grant may or may not be there, so we kind of had to work through some of that and corrected the discrepancies between some of the positions that were stated in the academic plan and what was in the budget. So startup funding is a concern just in general, but I feel like they can still work through those concerns. They have 20 years experience in doing this, so that was just something noted by the committee. And again, they've shown where they have the revenue sources. So if there are any questions, happy to address questions, or Mr. Reed can move forward with our resolution.
Thank you. Are there any questions, members of the board? Dr. Sullivan?
So I will read, so I'm on B, so Springs Public School, Tennessee Empower Academy. The review committee recommends authorization of the amended application for Springs Public Schools, Tennessee Empower Academy because the application meets or exceeds the criteria of the rubric in the areas of academic plan, operations, and financial capacity. So again, recommended motion to approve the amended application for Springs Public Schools, Tennessee Empower Academy as presented. Mr. Reed, I'll turn it over to you for a resolution.
The state statute says that any action by the board on this matter has to be done by resolution. So you have two options before you. You have a resolution approving the charter school application for Springs. You also have a resolution denying the application for Springs Charter School. So whichever resolution the board wishes to adopt is within the board's discretion.
Thank you. Members of the board, if it's okay with you, if you're ready to move forward, we will take a vote. And then depending on whatever we decide, Mr. Reed can come up and read the resolution. Okay? Ms. Hopkins, would you please take the roll?
Yes.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. We have a motion, but we have not gone, we need a motion, sorry. We're not there yet, I'm ahead of myself. Members of the board, you've heard the motion, you've heard the items, and thank you, Dr. Chastain, for the information, and the committee. At this time, we will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Maxwell. We have a first and a second. Now, Ms. Hopkins, would you please take the roll?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes. 5-2. That motion passes. Mr. Reed, would you please come read the resolution?
So the resolution that the board would need to consider will be this. It would be the resolution of the Rutherford County Board of Education approving Springs Public Schools, Tennessee's amended application for charter school, and this is for the Empower Academy. It says, whereas the Tennessee Public Charter Schools Act, TCA 49-13-101, establishes the process for charter schools, and whereas TCA 49-13-108 provides that local boards of education shall rule by resolution on whether to approve or deny a charter school application, and now, therefore, be it resolved by vote of the board members with 5 votes in favor of approval of the amended application and 2 votes against approval of the amended application on the 18th day of July 2022, that the Rutherford County Board of Education has approved the charter amended application submitted by applicant and has resolved to enter into a charter agreement with the applicant incorporating the terms and conditions set forth in the applicant's amended application. So that's the resolution before you based on your previous action, that this would have to be adopted by the Board of Education.
So do we need to vote on adoption?
Yes, there'll be has to be a motion to adopt this resolution.
Okay.
Yes.
Members of the board, you've heard the direction. We need a motion.
I move to adopt the resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Bratton.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Maxwell. Ms. Hawkins?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Appreciate Springs and working with us and always attending our meetings. I appreciated getting to know you. Next item.
All right, so next we have American Classical Academy, Rutherford, ACAR, and Dr. Chastain, if you'll walk us through that.
Okay. So the review team consists of some of the same members across both applicants, but a few different ones, but the same members as had the initial application. I mean, make that a little more confusing than it was necessary. The summary of the application itself has not changed in terms of intent, mission, vision. Most of this remained exactly the same, except for there were some mentions of American Classical Education now serving as the charter management organization, which was not mentioned in the initial application, and they did not check that they would be working with a charter management organization. So assuming best intent, that was perhaps an oversight, but it was something that changed from the initial application to the amended application. The enrollment proposal did not change. And here's where that was listed as far as a lack of clarity on whether American Classical Education will be serving as the charter management organization, which was not listed in that initial application. The definition for a CMO is just that they would manage multiple groups. So again, assuming best intent, it would be if there were multiple schools that had been authorized that they could serve as that charter management organization, but it was a difference in what was intended. I made an adjustment to this slide from the previous application, so a change from initial to amended. What I adjusted was the governing board. There was language that had been adjusted in the amended application to create some separation between the board itself of American Classical Education and its direct ties to Hillsdale. So as we'll go through in a little bit, they added a few members and tried to make a legal separation between those groups. As written in the recommendation report, however, it is very hard to separate those groups. Hillsdale in the amended application is still stated over 450 times. So American Classical Academy Rutherford would depend on the Hillsdale K-12 curriculum, which includes the 1776 curriculum. They would depend on Hillsdale K-12 office for professional development, for operations, for oversight, for evaluations, for suggesting recommendations, etc. The recommendation of the committee was to deny the amended application for it only meeting or exceeding one section of the rubric. There were things that were addressed in the amended application, even if they were attempts. One of the first weaknesses from the initial application and one of our still remaining biggest concerns is in regards to special education, special populations, diverse learners, RTI framework. They did include additional sections and address some things in the handbook. So that was noted. They've also made consistent efforts to determine a location. So I have no doubt that they are working hard to try to find a space, and additional letters of support were included. The main weaknesses as addressed by the committee and in the recommendation report, again, there's significant gaps in special education plans. There's a lot of comments about intent, but intent doesn't equal a plan. So all we have to look at is that application, and the special education plan and the RTI framework are still inadequate. There are also, worth noting, curricular gaps, and so there's a new section within the amended application that spells out a need for coming to Rutherford County as a philosophical and moral alignment. So that raises some concerns in terms of the curriculum and some of the concerns that were already addressed. We also had one of our internal experts that is social studies focused for our district look over the curriculum and the program guide, and additional concerns were noted, and specific content gaps and misalignments with our grade level expectations were also noted. It's worth noting as well that in the discussion of how the proposed school or applicant would work with the authorizer on its priorities, that ACAR did not discuss Rutherford County, but instead discussed Tennessee. The strengths remain the same. There's a very clear and consistent mission and vision. Retention of students and teachers remains a priority. Their goal is 85%. There's an emphasis on language and phonics and high-level text, and a keen awareness of parent engagement and awareness. In the operations plan and capacity, they did address, as requested by the initial application and the comments, they adjusted the board representation. So they did increase diversity and Tennessee representation. However, with those inclusions, there's still a concern of whether it really diversifies in terms of thought and experiences. They all still have pretty close ties to Hillsdale. Lack of identified location or facility, again, a remaining concern, but it would be unfair to say that because they didn't have a location selected, that would be a reason for denial. The affiliation with Hillsdale has just become increasingly problematic by no fault of ours, so that is just worth noting, and the committee also wanted that noted. In terms of teacher recruitment and licensure, with the comments made, that does bring up some reason for concern in terms of priorities and focus and how that would fit in with educating our shared students. The strengths, it was an incredibly detailed startup plan and pre-opening checklist, very well thought out grievance procedures, and very articulated hiring process. The financial plan met or exceeded the standard in the first round because they have generous funding, again, from Hillsdale as a primary source.
Thank you. Dr. Sullivan?
And so this goes back to A, American Classical Academy, Rutherford ACAR. The review committee recommends denial of the amended application for American Classical Academy, Rutherford ACAR, because the application failed to meet or exceed the criteria of the rubric in the areas of academic plan and operations. Recommended motion to deny the amended application for American Classical Academy, Rutherford ACAR, as presented.
Thank you. Dr. Chastain, I do have a question for you. I have spoken to both charter school applicants. I've had meetings with both of them. Over and over, you noted that Hillsdale is tied to this charter application.
Correct.
Right. In my conversations, as early as late as most recent Friday, I was told something completely opposite, that there is no affiliation, that they are completely separate. So I'm not sure if you can help me, but I'd like to see how are they seeing it as separate and we are not? And maybe that's not a fair question to you, but I have a problem with that.
So what we are going by is the application. So we have an application and we have the affiliations that are listed. As I said in the amended application, Hillsdale is mentioned 450 times. It is both their strength and their weakness in some cases. Hillsdale's Barney Charter School Initiative has been operating over 20 schools in the last 10 years, and this is their attempt to now expand into Tennessee under a completely different structure. So what is appropriate in other states with no issue is not necessarily appropriate here. So there's been some attempt to separate legally, and in conversations with ACAR representatives, he does speak on American Classical Education is a separate entity. So he is a trained lawyer and he knows the difference in those terms. I'm just speaking from reading an application and seeing where there's support for curriculum, professional development, operations, who's going to be doing the oversight, who's going to be providing the resources, who's the financial backer. It's all directly tied to Hillsdale.
Appreciate that. Thank you. I need a clarification. I apologize. All right. Members of the board, we have heard the recommendation, and we will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to deny.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Holden. Ms. Hopkins, would you please call the roll?
No.
Yes.
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 Yes. 6-1. Thank you. Mr. Reed?
Again, the board has to take action in regards to this matter based on a resolution. So you have two resolutions before you. You have one resolution approving the charter school application and one denying the charter school application of American Classical. So to be consistent with what the board has said it would do, you've got the resolution which is denying the application. I'll read that to you. It says, whereas the Tennessee Public Charter Schools Act establishes the process for the formation of charter schools, and whereas TCA 49-13-108 provides that local boards of education shall rule by resolution to approve or deny a charter school application, and whereas the Charter Review Committee of the Rutherford County School System has reviewed the amended application and made a report to the Rutherford County Board of Education of its findings, and whereas the Rutherford County Board of Education has considered the amended application of applicant for American Classical Education, therefore, be it resolved by a vote of the Rutherford County Board of Education, number one, the applicant American Classical Education's amended application to form American Classical Academy Rutherford is hereby denied. Number two, the grounds for the denial are as follows. The board adopts the findings of the Charter Review Committee concerning the amended application, which are incorporated herein by reference as if fully stated verbatim herein, and which are attached as Exhibit A. B, additionally, the board finds that the amended application does not meet or exceed the standards of the Tennessee Department of Education's application scoring rubric, while the financial plan and capacity portion of the rubric has been found to meet or exceed the standards of the Tennessee Department of Education. The amended application's academic plan and operations plan do not meet or exceed the Tennessee Department of Education standards. C, applicant fails to meet the criteria set forth in Tennessee State Board of Education's quality authorizing standards found in Tennessee State Board of Education Policy Number 6.111. Applicant's amended application fails to meet or exceed the standard in each category of the State of Tennessee scoring rubric related to the quality authorizing standard, the academic plan, and operations plan. To meet or exceed the standard, applicant's responses must be characterized as follows. The response reflects a thorough understanding of key issues. It clearly aligns with the mission and vision of the school, and the responses include specific and accurate information that shows thorough preparation. So that is the resolution you have before you, recommending the denial of American Classical Academy Rutherford.
Thank you. Members of the board, we need a motion to adopt the resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Estes. Ms. Hopkins, would you please take the roll?
No.
Yes.
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 Yes, thank you. Again, we appreciate the committee and all the work, Dr. Chastain, all the members of the committee. Dr. Sullivan?
Yeah. Again, I just want to thank everyone, and again, regardless of where our personal opinions are, that's what makes this country great, is that we can have differing opinions and still be able to move forward and work on what's best for our students. So I thank you guys for your work. I thank our committee, and thank you for letting me have that.
Thank you. We appreciate the staff. Thank you for being here. We know it's a late hour. And of course, to our sheriff's deputies and to our committee members, we appreciate you. Thank you. We are adjourned.